optometrist, and they did a battery test, and anybody have the wind blown in your eye test, right? So they did all that stuff. It was quite shocking. And so before I was going to discount places to buy glasses. I don't know if anybody has done that, those cheaters, I guess they call them, right? And it's very funny. There's a coffee place in the Como area of St. Paul that has a whole basket of these cheaters in there right on the counter. So I'm trying to get used to and then I got the invisible line thing going on, right? So I'm getting used to that. And I used to laugh at my mom because she would look at stuff like this. And then she's like, oh, okay, I can see that. And I'm like, ah! And now, if I don't have these, I'm looking at things like this, and it's not funny. So just wonderful. So, just want to say thank you so much for being here this morning. Hopefully we will put a capstone on all the learning that we've been doing and the sharing that we've done. Is there anybody here that's new to our community, to our gatherings, that hasn't been here in one of the previous sessions? Great, cool. So, because I'm making the assumptions that we're building on some of the things that we've learned. So, I also make the assumption that people have something to write with. Is that a safe assumption to make, that people have something to write with? And if you have something extra, because unfortunately I didn't bring anything unless the university has some what is that stuff called? Bling, right? Swag, right? Bling. It was bling when I was coming up. Now it's swag, right? So if you don't have something to write with, if you can just acknowledge that so we can get that to you. Oh, this would help. Now, woo. So this should help. So I'm not yelling at you, although I don't know if that stops you from yelling. It just makes. Anyway, so if you don't have something to write with, if you could just say so we can get you something. And remember, a closed mouth never gets fed. Right? So you have to say what it is that you need. All right. So it's impossible to get some. I have some folks over here. Let me just grab some of those. I feel like Wayne Brady on The Price is Right. You know, what's this show? Cheers. Well, you go. So here we are. Now, I have to. So one of my new favorite songs is by Bag and Bones Man. Has anyone heard that song by Bag and Bones Man? He sings the song, and maybe I'll play it a little later. I'm only human. And so you know, I played in the car, I played at home, and you know, we're bopping around. And now let me see, what's one of the lyrics? Some people have a real problem. Some people out of luck. Some people think I can solve them. Lord heavens above, I'm only human after all. I'm only human after all. Don't put your blame on me. Don't put your blame on me. So that's one of my favorite songs. I just love it. It's catchy. It deals with all the stuff I'm about, which is, you know, kind of diversity, taking personal responsibility, all this kind of stuff. So my 3-year-old daughter loves that, and so she's belting that out everywhere we go. Right? We're in Target, we're out at Costco, and she's belting that stuff out. And so I want to be upfront and honest with you that I am only human. I'm only human. So I bought a trailer online So a teardrop camper, anybody ever seen those teardrop campers? So this one I bought in Mankato. So I drove from the Twin Cities down to Mankato to buy this teardrop camper. And it wasn't completed, which is why I got a really good deal, right? So it had the sides, it had the frame, it doesn't have the top, and we haven't put the windows in or the doors. So that's going to be my winter project. So by the time spring comes, we're ready to go camping. And if it happens to be ready before spring, we may just go camping anyway because I'm so excited about this as our project. So we drove from the cities down to get this camper, and I overestimated our ability to get through traffic. Right, so we got here a little early. So right in St. Peter, so before we come into Mankato, in St. Peter, there's that McDonald's, right? So my family and I are sitting in the play area. So my wife and my daughter were sitting in the play area. And are people familiar with that McDonald's? In that play area. So we're sitting there in the play area, and my daughter is playing around, and she's by herself. And I think there's a Hispanic family there as well. So it's like these two kids. Wow. So we're sitting there having a Happy Meal or whatever, and then it must have been time for school to let out because there are about 10 kids who just kind of come into the play area. And so I'm sitting there with my family, and now I'm going to use some frank language because this is the language that the kids use. So I just want to put that out there, and I'm not condoning this kind of language or whatever, but I'm only human, right? So I'm sitting there, and most of these kids seem like kids of color. There may have been some biracial kids, I couldn't tell, but for the most part, they're like kids of color and predominantly African American. Right? So I'm sitting there and with my family, and we're playing, and so those kids are playing. And one of the kids out of this group of 10 kids is the littlest kid. And I would say he's probably about 5 or 6, right? So obviously school age, but not necessarily. These kids probably should not have been left alone, to come into McDonald's. So the kids are playing and this kind of stuff. And one of the kids, this particular kid, is just kind of out of control, right? So he's climbing all over stuff that the way you're not supposed to climb in the play area, right? There are certain ways you play in the play area, and there are certain ways that you don't. So he's swinging off the things and climbing on the stuff. And so he gets on one of the things, and he says, "Nigga, you need to get your ass up here." That's what he says. 5 or 6. Now, I am only human. So before I knew what happened, I said, "You better watch your mouth." I could have been kinder. I could have been more appropriate. But I'm only human. And so my response to that level of disrespect and all this stuff, I wasn't thinking, I wasn't trying to build relationships, I wasn't trying to do all that kind of stuff. I wanted that behavior to stop because my daughter is hearing this stuff from somebody who she thinks might be her peer. Upon reflection, I thought about things that I could do differently. I thought about ways that I could be more helpful. And guess what? The next time that happens, I'm going to be ready. Because it will happen again. Not necessarily that kid, not in that same situation, but there will be other situations that will test if I actually learned my lesson in that particular thing. Was my response wrong or bad? I don't think so. Could I have done it better? Yes. I don't think what I did was wrong. But I think I could have done it better. And the more we think about that in our interactions, and I want to tell you, while in that McDonald's, there were a lot of Somali kids who came into the McDonald's. I was sitting there like, wow, St. Peter does have a lot of Somali kids in this community, right? But guess what they wanted when they walked into the McDonald's? They wanted to be treated like Somali kids. No, they wanted their crappy cheeseburger just like I wanted my crappy cheeseburger, right? And isn't that weird that we all can make better burgers than McDonald's? but we're not making billions. It's kind of interesting. Right. So I wanted to be honest and forthcoming in the recognition that I have a ways to go too. And I hope you're encouraged by the fact that you know you have a ways to go. I was talking with my students just yesterday at Bethel, and one of my students said something I thought was really interesting. And they said, and I may have mentioned this before, but it was sparked again by this conversation I had yesterday. One of the students said, "I want to know everything." I said, "Really?" He was like, "Yeah, I want to know everything. I want to know the mysteries of the universe." And he was going so far as to say that he was going to try chemical substances to induce his ability to expand his experiences. Anybody know people like that, right? For some people don't know what I'm talking about. He wanted to drop some acid. Right? He wanted to do some hash or whatever, right? Because it expands his experiences. And I said, "You know what your problem is?" He was like, "No, because people love it when you try to identify what their problem is when they haven't asked you, right?" So it's like he didn't ask me to identify his problem, but I said, "You know what your problem is?" And he said, "No." I said, "You want to know everything?" He said, "Yes, I want to know everything." I said, "Great. So you no longer want to be human. You don't want to be human." It was like, "No, I don't know." Who does he want to be? He wants to be God. Now, here's the scary thing about his way of looking at the world. He wants to be God. He wants to know everything. He wants to blah, 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 blah. Our human existence doesn't allow for that because we only have so much time. We only have so much time, so I can't know everything. But I am responsible for what I do know. So what I understand about the roots of oppression and racism and sexism and I don't want to undermine people's Facebook posts, but I want to put on the Facebook post, "Me too." Are people familiar with that hashtag and that conversation about women being harassed in the world? I want to let you know that yes, and I don't want to undermine that, but I've been harassed too for the same kinds of things. I turned down scholarships because I felt that the person that was trying to give me the scholarship wanted more from me than what I was willing to give. But the key problem is we want to be God. We want to control everything. But we can't. So we settle for controlling others. If I can't control everything, at least I can control you. And if I can't control you, the next best thing of controlling you is controlling me. So I'll get tatted up. Pow, pow, pow. I'll get piercings. I'll get the augmentations. Because if I have no control, I can't control me. So why do other people do what they do? Partly they're looking for safety, significance, and belonging. The other part is that they do it because they can. They do it because they can. So why do certain behaviors blah, 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 exhibit themselves and all that kind of stuff? You have to recognize that people are looking for safety, significance, and belonging just like you are, and their methods may be different. And what do we call the differing methods, particularly given this context of diversity, equity, and inclusion? What do we call differing methods? We call that culture. We call that culture. And why are cultures different? That's not rhetorical. This is talk back time. Why are cultures different? Because their experiences are different. Right? And why are their experiences different? Their environments are different. So if I see a culture, one of the things I should ask is, what environment did this culture come from? What makes them act the way they do, right? Floridians are very strange in the winter. They're very strange in the winter. They don't do fun stuff like we do. They don't ice fish. They don't cross-country ski. They don't look for medallions in the heat and in the depths of winter. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Looking for medallions? Okay, cool. Our cultures are very different because of our environments, our contexts. Right? Cool. So if I want to understand people's cultures, I have to start asking those kinds of questions. So here we are. Here we are. We have diversity in our community. Our community is changing. Demographics are changing. The silver tsunami is still kind of sweeping through our organizations. And when people start referring to me as the young person, and we need the young people like you. I love that, right? I'm almost 50 years old, and they call me young people like you. I think that's hilarious, right? But that silver tsunami. So demographics are changing, and what do we recognize about generations in the workplace? More diversity or less diversity as the silver tsunami kind of sweeps through. More diversity, not just in skin tones or cultural backgrounds, but in how business gets done. Right? We used to call it early in the 90s. They had this new thing called telecommuting. Telecommuting. You could work at home, but you had to be close to the telephone just in case, right? And the thing about telecommuting was you couldn't be on AOL and take a call at the same time, because it was the same line. Remember? Right? Now we don't have all that kind of stuff, right? So context is constantly changing, which requires us to change. So on the first page of your, and I just want you to know that I gave you a review because I'm going to, all that stuff I was just talking about was review because we're going to end up taking a pop quiz in just a second. So I wanted to trick you into review so we can take this pop quiz together. So we're here. On page 1 of your handout is a map of Minnesota, and we've talked about this before in terms of this idea that particularly the presidential election was about red and blue, right? And people said there's conservatives and liberals, or Democrats, that's what they say, Democrats and Republicans, right? And what I would like to suggest, just like I suggested before, is that those people who tried to say what the outcome of the election was going to be got it wrong because they were asking the wrong questions. They didn't recognize that there was an ideology change, an idea that people actually voted for, and not necessarily the person or persons that were running in the election. And that ideology, the way people were thinking, how they voted, was that they voted for people who represented best the ideas that they were voting for. And they voted, in this particular case, for a candidate who was conservative. And I'm not talking about, and let me just put this out here, I believe that Donald Trump is a rhino. That a rhino is Republican in name only, right? So I believe he's a rhino, but that doesn't have any bearing on any other stuff. It's just my personal belief. Because the Republicans I know would act a little differently than how this dude shows up. But that's anyway. So here we are. This is it. And people were I don't know if you remember, people were protesting. That's not my president. The fact of the matter is, this is where we are now. One of the most dangerous things, and as I get older, I'm recognizing this more, that one of the most disheartening, paralyzing concepts that one can hold on to. Now, and it sounds like I'm being negative, and I'm not being negative, but I think you'll see where I'm going. The most debilitating or demoralizing concept one can hold on to is hope. Hope is absolutely demoralizing in the sense that when it doesn't occur, how does one feel? You know, the holiday seasons are coming up, right? Have you ever hoped to have a really good meal and gotten there and was like, I shaved my legs for this? Right? Ever? Demoralizing! So this is what I've come to. Because people ask me goofy questions like, haven't race relations gotten better? Haven't we gotten better? Well, I want to know what better is. What is better? What I know is what we have right now, today. What we have right now, today. And so I have stopped hoping for a better day. And I create my better day today. I try to build those relationships today. And I'm human and I fail. But I keep trying. So what if things don't get better? What do we do about today? What do we do about today? And so that's the question I really want us to think about, right? So we're in a conservative nation, which means people are slow to change. They want change to slow down, to stop. But what do we know is currently happening? It's changing. So what I'd like you to do with a partner is to answer those two questions at the bottom. How do you answer those two questions? And I'll give you about 3 minutes to do that. All right? So answer those two questions at the bottom of page 1. Given this idea that we're in a conservative nation, what does that mean for our communities? What does that mean for our workplaces? What is this idea of being slow to change in a time where change is happening rapidly? What does that mean for us? All right? So 2 minutes with your neighbor. All right? 4, 3, 2, 1, and so I want to ask these questions, and hopefully people have written down some of their thoughts or parts of their conversations that they've had at their seat. And so, given the fact that we live in a conservative environment and things are rapidly changing, what does that mean for our communities? What does that mean for us? And when I say community, I mean Mankato and St. Peter. Like, what is that? North Mankato and St. Peter. What does that mean for us?
We might have to change faster than we used to.
So we may have to change faster than we used to. There's going to be conflict between people who accept the changes that are happening. Is conflict good or bad? It can be both. It can be good and it can be bad. When is it bad? When is conflict bad? When no one learns anything from it and we're not able to get anything done. Right? I find it very interesting that President Barack Hussein Obama signed a bunch of executive orders because he couldn't get things done. I just read that President Donald Trump, is signing executive orders because he can't get anything done. I find that interesting because of conflict. When is conflict good? When it causes change. Ultimately, when we're able to build something together, right? I don't know how many of you have an intimate partner, but have you agreed with your intimate partner on every single thing, every single time there was a decision to be made? No. And in my case, sometimes I've had to make executive decisions. How do you think that went over? Right? What are the best decisions? The best decisions are the ones that we make together, even if they suck. Why? Because it's our sucky decision. It's our sucky decision. So that's important to recognize. And whose job is it to mediate that conflict? Does the conflict just work itself out by itself? Anyone tried that with an intimate partner? Oh, we're not going to talk about that. It'll work itself out. Right? Typically doesn't. What does it take to mediate that conflict? What's that? Conversations, relationships, leaders. Is it more important to be right or effective? No, don't restart. Don't restart. I guess it's too late. It's already done. Yeah, no, is it more important to be right or effective? And in my opinion, I'd rather be effective than to be right. And a lot of times, so I was doing some stuff with Eastern Carver County Schools, and they asked me a question that I thought was a really important question. For those people who are conservative, who are slow to change, now I'm not talking about political, I'm talking about slow to change. How do you get them along? How do you bring them along? Because a lot of times, groups that I'm speaking with, there's the assumption by people in the group that everybody there is, you're talking to the choir. You need to talk to those other people who don't get it. Well, why might they not be getting it? Because they don't like what you're giving. So we got to change. And how do we get those other people? Through relationships. We talk to them. We question them. We encourage them to think strategic and different. Right? So that's important. The second question, what adaptations might we need to consider given the fact that we have rapid change and lots of people who are slow to that change? What adaptations might be necessary? What might we have to do different?
Be more willing to compromise.
Be more willing to compromise. All right. Can I jump in you just for a second? All right, cool. You look like you can take it. All right. Compromise sucks. It sucks. Why does compromise suck? I'm sorry if I'm being frank. I mean, I don't want to. I'm trying to evoke some thought, right? Why do compromise? Why are they bad? Yes. Oh, because what? You don't necessarily get what you want. It's even worse than that.
No one gets what they want.
No, it's even worse than that. So, compromise. And I want to use intimate partner relationships as a metaphor, right? So, those people who aren't in intimate partner relationships, I'm not, yeah. So, at any rate, so I'm in a relationship with with my wife, and I like my motorcycle. Love my motorcycle. Little crotch rocket. Right? Right? Love it. My wife hates my motorcycle, thinks it's a dangerous thing. She likes sewing and scrapbooking. I'm not that into the whole scrapbooking thing, right? Because as a matter of fact, she buys all this stuff, makes this other stuff, and then throws half the stuff that she just bought away. I'm like, can't you reuse that stuff? She's like, no, I got to get a new thing. Right? So she's always so we made some compromises. I would sell my motorcycle, and she would give up her scrapbooking. People are like, ooh, that's a commitment. Right? That's fair, right? I gave up something, she gave up something. That's fair, right? Isn't that fair? Wouldn't that be fair? Until one of us felt like we gave up too much. She's like, I can't believe, and it always comes out in an argument. I can't believe you made me stop scrapbooking. That was my outlet. That was my outlet. And I'm like, I can't believe you made me give up my motorcycle. That was my outlet, right? And then that hypothetical situation. I'm not saying this really happened, right? So, what is at the root of every compromise?
Acceptance.
What's that? Acceptance. What's that? Loss. Resentment. No, the root of every compromise is resentment. Because as soon as I feel like you didn't give up as much as I gave up, the whole thing is scrapped. Right? So this is the thing that we have to do, and I want to offer this to us, is not compromise, but collaborate. Now, when we sat down and we talked about her giving up her scrapbooking and me giving up my motorcycle, the root reason we did that was so that we could save up for a cruise. When we knew what the purpose was for the things that we gave up, the things we gave up didn't matter because the goal was better than the things we gave up. When we work together, the things that we build together oftentimes should be better than the things that we were giving up to even be together in the first place. And so some people feel, and I said this to my students, and we've addressed this as well, but I said this to my students, my class is, I have 29 white females and one Asian, one Hmong guy in my class. So I said to all of those single white females, I said, one of the things that I want you to do is I want you to be proud of being white. And we've addressed this. And as teachers, why do I want them to have want them to be proud of being white? And I'm not saying white pride, with the crazy cone hats and, the burning of stuff. I'm not talking about that. But why do I want these folks, these teachers going into classrooms to be proud of their background, their heritage? Why do I want them to do that? What do you think? Why would I want that for you? Those of you who proclaim to be, white. Why would I want that for you? Marco.
Confidence.
What's that?
I want them to be confident
I want them to be confident in what?
in themselves.
In themselves. Why?
And face challenges, probably.
So because they will face challenges. And what else?
Happiness.
Happiness, so they can have some happiness about being who they are. They won't hold any resentment towards who? Their students. Why are they pulling them out of my class for that enrichment? What's the ... behind that? Kids get pulled out for some kind of cultural enrichment or some kind of special group, and the teacher says, why are they pulling them out of my class? What's the ... behind that? What's the unsaid stuff? I never got that. Nobody ever pulled me out for special, blah, blah. I never got special advantages. But if you recognize in yourself, you know what? Those kids need some things because this world isn't oftentimes giving them things that they need. And I'm able to find the things that I need. Right? So when we that seed of resentment is a nasty little thing because you never know when it starts sprouting and when it'll pop up. And as public servants, we have to recognize that if we're operating from that place of, well, I just have to do this. They're going to be here anyway. I may as, that certainly isn't the spirit of servant leadership, right? Of servant leadership. So I did have the agenda up. When we get a break, we'll try to bring that stuff back up. But let's move forward. So on page 2, what I'd like to do is I want to give you probably about 7 minutes to do this. So you have an intercultural competence bingo, and we did the review for most of the stuff earlier in the thing. And some of you have read ahead and figured out the piece, but I'll leave that to you to kind of figure out. So you have 7 minutes to complete this bingo. All of the answers are in this room. Many of them you may find in the packet itself through the curriculum pieces. This is all stuff we've already talked about. You have 7 minutes to complete this bingo. What I want you to do is to find other people who can answer give you the answers for these and put their initials in the appropriate bingo box. All right? So you have 7 minutes to do this, starting now. And you can move around. You can walk around. You can engage folks.